I have wanted to sit down with my next guest for a long time to ask him about his amazing LinkedIn posts, which generate hundreds of comments and engagements. His posts are genuine, they're insightful, they're funny, and they strike a chord with healthcare entrepreneurs as well as people working in healthcare. Joining me today is Joshua Liu. He's the co-founder and CEO of SeamlessMD. If you haven't read any of Joshua's posts on LinkedIn, I encourage you to pause this video and go out there to check out a few before continuing. I'm going to ask Joshua to reveal his LinkedIn secrets, especially how he comes up with his posts and how he finds time for them. Let's get to it.
Sway Health.
Josh, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Colin. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. It's been a long time coming. We've known each other for a long time, and now I finally get you on the Sway program.
Amazing. Thanks for having me.
All right, Josh, let's dive right in. Can you share some of the results that you've seen from the investment that you have made on social media?
Yeah, and just for context, I've been posting personally on my account on LinkedIn, so not through our company kind of corporate account. And it's been surprising. I think when I started just writing posts on LinkedIn, it was more just to share learnings, not really, you're kind of throwing out your ideas and your learnings into the abyss, and you don't know what's going to happen. So I'll tell you what wasn't surprising, and I'll tell you what was surprising. I'm a healthcare technology entrepreneur, and part of my writing is about lessons learned building a health tech company. So it wasn't surprising to me when, fellow entrepreneurs or folks in industry, other vendors were commenting or engaging and finding value. I think what did surprise me were the number of non-industry people, so existing health system and hospital customers, prospective healthcare organizations, as well, were either commenting or engaging, but surprisingly, sometimes even just messaging me directly, saying, "Oh my gosh, like I really appreciated that topic you wrote. It really resonated for some reason." And I think one of the things I've learned is that there are a lot of people who don't engage with the actual post, but they're still consuming, they're still reading it. And then there are a lot of folks actually, either existing customers or potential ones, where if I end up in a meeting with them, they'll just by chance mention, "Oh yeah, Josh, by the way, like I really like enjoyed that post you wrote about this topic. It really hit me." And again, these are folks who never would comment, never would like a post, but they're clearly reading it. And so I've been surprised by the reach of the posts.
And I have to say, and we'll put a picture of the posts here on the screen for everybody. But the posts that you write, they're very personal and personable. They tell a really good story. They have really good graphics, a mixture of different types of graphics, and the ones that I think that attract the audience. First of all, you cover a variety of topics, right? You're not just on one. So there's a lot for you that, you as an entrepreneur, as you just said, I find those pretty good. And then you have a commentary on the industry as well. You really kind of mix it up very well on your posts on LinkedIn.
Thank you. Yeah, I think when I first started, I was kind of just trying a bunch of different things. And then I think over time I started to figure out there were certain kind of passion topics that I'm most keen on that are also relevant to our space. And so I ended up actually initially writing out what I called like pillar topics. So I had like 7 or 8 pillar topics that I felt like, okay, these are topics that I'm passionate about, that I've, gained experience and knowledge in, that I can add value to the conversation around. And so it's not that I am prescriptive and always only writing about those 7 or 8 topics, but it's almost like these are topics I can always go back to if I'm kind of like stuck on, what are our themes or topics that I can write about.
I like it. And Josh, you kind of touched on it at the start there, but can you share an example of how you made a connection with somebody maybe online that moved into real life?
Yeah, so a good recent example. You might know him, like Mendo Erlenwine.
Mm.
Um, he's the co-founder of CareCo, but even before that, he's been a regular healthcare, podcaster and leader of the space. And so we just connected because we enjoyed each other's content online, and then we actually I think recorded an episode on his podcast together. We had a conversation virtually, and then we actually finally met in person at HIMSS this past month. So it's incredible that LinkedIn is now a platform to actually help me connect with other professionals. It wasn't really that way before the last few years, actually, but I think writing has actually helped me build more relationships.
John, I gotta admit, I'm being totally remiss here. I didn't even ask you to introduce yourself or your company. We just dove into the topic. So maybe before we go any further, Josh, can you just give us a little bit of your background and tell us a little bit about Seamless MD?
Yeah, so I actually started off in the clinical world. I did my training in medicine about 12 or 13 years ago, and I fell in love with the idea of using technology to better support patients outside the four walls of the hospital. So I met a couple of brilliant engineers, and we started this company called SeamlessMD. And essentially, what we do is provide a GPS to a patient through their smartphone, tablet, or desktop browser to guide them step by step with reminders, education, and symptom monitoring as they go through a surgical procedure or a chronic condition or another healthcare journey, with the goal of helping health systems to improve the patient experience, clinical outcomes, and lower costs of care for the system as well.
And you are a success story. I mean, you have grown the company from very humble roots to being a very powerful one in the industry now. You're all over the place, which is great.
Thank you, Colin. And Colin has been an amazing mentor to us over the years. So appreciate everything that you've shared with us to help us grow.
Oh, well, thanks for saying that. Now, Josh, you did mention, LinkedIn is primarily the place where I see your posts. And you do post very consistently on that platform. Why did you choose LinkedIn as your primary one?
So there were two that I tried at the same time. So I started really getting into writing in the summer of 2023. And so I tried LinkedIn and I tried Twitter as well, actually. I was actually far more active on Twitter even before I was active on LinkedIn. And it turned out, and again, by the way, I still post on both, but the LinkedIn engagement has and the reach has been far, far better, especially with our ecosystem in healthcare among healthcare systems and so forth. And I think what I've just found are a few things. One is a lot of folks in our space, so healthcare leaders, for example, they're just far more on LinkedIn and more engaged on LinkedIn in the first place. There are much fewer folks on Twitter in this space. And then secondly, ever since actually the ownership of Twitter changed and it became X, for whatever reason, um, I've gotten far less distribution of my tweets than I did before that change in ownership. So I don't know. I mean, obviously something changed about the algorithm, but it's just not reaching folks in healthcare as much. And so I post on both, but LinkedIn has definitely been much better.
And how are you finding that experience now on LinkedIn? You mentioned that it's really taken off over the last little bit. Was there sort of a period where it was like tossing things into the ether and then all of a sudden it just blew up for you?
Yeah, I mean, I would say for I say where I was lucky is, I've been in the industry for, over 12 years now. So I had several thousand, LinkedIn connections. So even when I started posting, there wasn't a lot of engagement, but at least there was like, a little bit here and there because I had an existing network. I think it would have been more difficult if I had started writing 12 years ago and I had, no LinkedIn connection. So I had a little bit of support at the beginning. But yeah, it took maybe, 3 months to number one, just like get in the habit of writing and iterate what worked and what didn't for me. And I think, as my connections grew, it just became that much more likely that someone was going to engage. And I think one of the big learnings is it's hard to tell what would actually resonate. So there are some posts that I just, literally was like writing it out on my phone in 15 minutes that went viral. And I've had others where I put so much thought into it. It took me over an hour to write it, and no one really cared. And so I think it's as much as I try to think I've figured out a little bit of what will be valuable to people, I'm still often very wrong, and I'm still learning.
That algorithm is for B2B people. That algorithm is quite challenging to figure out, right? There doesn't seem to be a magic formula yet for B2B type stuff. I mean, for at least for our space anyway. Um, so actually, can you walk me through how you go about crafting a post? Like it's funny because you mentioned the sort of dichotomy here. You've got some that you take 15 minutes, just do it on your phone, and some that you spend a little bit more time on. But can you walk me through a typical post of yours? How do you craft it? How do you go about it?
Yeah, so it starts with getting inspiration for an idea, and that usually comes to me from a few sources. So one, it's could be something that I've seen on the news, so a recent story or event in the industry. Often it's something that I'm learning from talking to health system customer partners. So, I'm often, meeting with customers or other health system prospects who, just in conversation, they're sharing something about either problems they're facing or value they're seeing in our solution or anything in between. And so often that gives me inspiration for a topic to write about because, hey, like if these health system partners are having these challenges, I'm sure others are too. And then sometimes it's just internal things that I'm learning within our team about building the company. So those are kind of three sources. And so I try to think through what happened the last, day or a week. And actually what helps is throughout the week, if something strikes me as like, oh, this might be a really useful lesson to share, I'll jot the topic down in a notepad and I'll kind of sort of create this little bank of like potential ideas. And so I kind of go back to that too when I'm trying to think of what to write.
Now, I
And then actually, sorry, go ahead, Colin.
no, I was gonna say I have to ask this: is it literally a notepad or is it like is it an electronic notepad?
Oh, sorry, it's yeah, it's Notepad on my phone. Um, and then I was going to say, so once I have the idea, um, something that I've learned from others who write a lot is, and I'm sure you know this. I'm just like for folks who aren't as familiar with content writing, the first sentence or what they call the hook is especially the most important on LinkedIn or Twitter because as people might know on LinkedIn, you only see the first sentence of a post as you scroll, and only if you click read more do you see the rest. So 95% of your post can be just incredibly valuable, but if the first 5% is just it doesn't catch people's attention, they're not going to stop, read, and click read more. So I actually spend the first bit of time trying to figure out, okay, what's the right hook that gets people excited to read more? And then I do the other 95% and work to make that useful. But I'm still not great at it, but if you get the hook right, that's how you actually get folks actually reading in the first place. So I think a lot of folks miss that part most of all. And then I write it out. I try not to edit too much as I write it, and then I kind of like edit a little bit afterwards. But yeah, and then I try to keep it. I think LinkedIn is smart. They kind of cut you to 3,000 characters, so you have to be concise to some extent.
Not as concise as X, or it
Yeah.
used to be. But yeah, that's great, and that's so interesting that you focus so much of your time on the first sentence because that it's like the old headlines, right? In the old written and printed days, you got to spend that time on the headline and the subhead because that's all that usually people are glancing at, and now that's translated onto to LinkedIn. Um, and how often like do you carve out time for this, Josh, or do you just sort of do it when you have a moment? Like how do you do that part of crafting your posts?
Yeah, so I know some people like try to batch it. So some other people would say, okay, I'm going to write for hours one day of the week and kind of just plan it out. Um, I'm not that organized. I actually typically just, one of the first things in the morning I do is just like, try to brainstorm something and write it out. Partially because for me, like I'm the most creative in the morning. I'm much less creative in the evenings or the afternoons. So I try to get something out in the morning. Also because I think just from a timing point of view, you know, folks who I guess should be at work are also scrolling their LinkedIn during the work time. So, for me at least, I found it better if I post something in the morning. It reaches folks throughout the day as opposed to if I post it, at 9 p.m. at night.
So you don't actually say, hey, listen, on Friday from 10 to 12, this is my dedicated writing hour. You just sort of, if you're feeling it, you write it in the morning, and that's how it goes.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's no really hard schedule that I subscribe to.
And how much time in a given week do you feel you spend crafting these posts? Like, is it an hour a week, a couple hours a week? What's that like?
So I would say I probably spend, 30 to 60 minutes for a post. So if you I guess multiply that by, 6 to 7 days a week, depending, that ends up being what, like 3.5 to 7 hours or so, depending.
Right. So yeah, okay.
Yeah,
So
so
that's
not
that's
not a
significant.
little,
That's
but yeah.
yeah, it's not half an hour, but it's also it's not a full day's work, but getting there, like it's 3.5 hours. So, you know, obviously you're finding value in that, right? And you mentioned it off the top, some of the connections you're making and the people you're getting a chance to meet, the reactions that you're getting from even prospects who obviously don't work at an entrepreneurial health tech company, right? Your prospects are health systems. So obviously you're finding value in that. Now, but you were a writer. You were telling me that, you kind of were a writer before all this started, right? Do you want to tell me a little bit about that before I ask my next question?
Yeah, yeah. So, when I was in undergrad, I started a blog just to help students applying to university and stuff like that. And I got really into just like writing and sharing my lessons. And then when I actually started the company, I kind of stopped writing. And so it was only about, almost 2 years ago that I refound my, passion for writing again, through LinkedIn. But to your point, I think I'm lucky in that writing has always been something I really enjoyed. So I know there are probably some folks where writing isn't something they maybe enjoyed, growing up. So this may be harder for them. And I think for me, I think I've realized that everyone has different strengths. So part of the reason I picked writing was because it was a strength that I could lean into. And so for me, it made sense. But for others who maybe don't love writing but love doing other things, maybe there's a different venue that works better for them.
So for that, I mean, let let's go down this road for a second. So if you were giving advice to someone who is a bit of a writer, I won't say like they're not going to write the next great American novel or anything, but they like writing, they don't mind writing, but maybe had like you hadn't done it in a long time, certainly maybe not hasn't done it for business purposes. Um, what advice would you give them to maybe respark that love of writing and maybe turn it into writing for and on social media platforms like LinkedIn?
Yeah, I guess part of it is helping them figure out what are those pillar topics that they should consider writing about. Because I think a lot of folks when they start, they go, "Oh my gosh, like I don't know what to write about." And I think people underestimate how much knowledge they've acquired from their past experiences, but also all the knowledge they're going to gain from new experiences, every day of the week. So I'd say, hey, like think about what are some of the specific like lessons or experiences that you've personally had, and if you had to, write down the five or six main topics that you've had experience or knowledge in, what would those be? And start to write out, okay, like I actually have expertise in stuff. I may not have realized it, but these are things I can really write about. And then two is like, what are the things happening in your life now? Meetings you're having, stuff that you're building, lessons that you're learning, and turning that into content. Because I think what I find is that what people really get excited about it is like lessons and experiences of others more so than knowledge that they can find, in Wikipedia or something, right? So the more you can tap into your own actual experiences, the more you can find stuff to write about. But then two is that I think people really like authentic writing, and that only happens from again like your own experiences, right? Sometimes people ask me like, "Oh, like, are you working with a ghostwriter, or how have you like mastered using Chat GPT to write this?" I'm like, no, 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 like it wouldn't be as good or authentic if I didn't write my own stuff. I have my own sort of my own voice and how I write, and I feel like everyone has to find that voice to produce the best content for themselves. You can't really manufacture that automatically. Um, but yeah, I'd start there. Like I'd look inward to personal experience.
Well, I like that. Those are fantastic ideas, right? Go with your own strengths. I think the other one I would say is, just try it. I mean, it unlike a printed piece, like really a printed piece, social media is a bit ephemeral. Like it doesn't last super long, right? It's very rare that, a post from 2.5, 3 years ago, is going to be referenced today, right? So what I mean by that is, hey, if you're lucky, it might, but most of the time people don't go back that far. So, hey, whatever you write today, people are not going to remember 2 years from now. So just get out and try it. And like you, over time, you just start to find your own voice and then you get more comfortable. And then it's just sort of like riding a bike, right? You're going and going and you're getting better every time. And then I think we all cringe if we ever looked back at our first post, we'd be like, oh my gosh, like look how bad that was. But you've grown since then.
Totally. The other thing I'd add is, I think in the past, like corporate marketing was a big thing, but I think now what I've seen is that um, people like having a personal connection to the companies they partner with, and in many cases, like the leaders of those companies can be a great way to have a personal connection. Like I can tell you, there's been many times where I'll write about something, and even if it's not me working day to day with a health system partner, if they go, oh wow, like Josh has shown me that he actually understands like my needs as a health system, it gives them confidence that everyone else on our team does too, and they can put a face to that that understanding that I've shared, and not like a corporate logo kind of fake. And so it feels like there are, to your point, a lot of companies where if they had invested more in not just writing, but I think, you know, personal writing from leaders in the company, it can make a big difference in building that trust and expertise with their partners as well.
And I think, what you're saying, it's not an either or, right? It can be both, right? You have your corporate voice, the corporate stuff that you put out, right? The how-tos that maybe go on your website. Great, you should have those. But your style of writing is very personable. It's about you as an entrepreneur, it's about you as a company leader, it's about your challenges that you've helped customers with, right? I mean, you've seen. And so that's from you as an individual. Now, you are affiliated with Seamless, so there's no doubt about that. And I think that just helps the company in a different way, right? Like to your
Yes,
point, it humanizes the company.
absolutely. It does. And so you're right. I don't think it's one or the other. I think just folks have to learn how to use both, where both can add value. Yeah.
Yeah, and you've just given our audience a great ROI reason. Like you just explained that, hey, by writing this, it rubs off on the rest of your people, your team, and your company that, well, if you understand it and are writing this way, then likelihood is that your team also gets it and the rest of the company will behave this way. So it's a nice way to kind of have that halo effect between what you've written and for the company that you're representing.
Yeah. I think the only thing I'd add is that, and we touched a bit on this earlier, because the only thing you can measure online are the likes and the comments, it's easy to underestimate the impact you can have with it. But I can tell you, like I've had all kinds of folks, once they actually are meeting with me or on a call with me, say, "Oh, by the way, I shared that post you wrote with like people on my team," kind of thing. And they're not always going to message you that, right? So sometimes you just have to like do this long enough and then just by chance learn what's going on. And the other thing is that if one person is saying that, you don't know about the other 10 who are doing it as well, who just never tell you these things, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's such great validation, right? Like to know that you aren't just throwing this out in the ether. People are consuming it and are forwarding it around. But you're right. I mean, the algorithms and the platforms don't do a great job at telling you when people have done that. So good for you for getting that kind of feedback.
Thank you.
That's great to have. So last question for you, Josh. I've asked you so many, but where can people go to learn more about Seamless and connect with you?
Yeah, so you can learn more about Seamless at www.seamless.md, and you can find me on both LinkedIn and Twitter. Twitter is just at Joshua P. Liu, and then LinkedIn, I think that's my same handle, but if you just search Joshua Liu, you'll find me on LinkedIn as well.
And I think you're going to be the first one that comes up given the amount of posts you have. So that's a good thing as well. Another
It's just
reason.
not a popular name, that's all.
Well, Josh, truly, truly appreciate you coming on the program. And thank you for all the great insights you shared with us today.
Thanks, Colin. It's been fun.
Wow, I really enjoyed that conversation. I'm a big fan of Joshua's and his posts on LinkedIn. He shared a ton of great information with me during our discussion, and my favorite was his writing tip about how you just have to keep writing and eventually you will find your own authentic voice. I also loved how he is seeing an actual ROI from his time and effort on social media, and how he sees social media as a way to help establish trust with potential clients. And hey, if you enjoyed this video, please mash that like button and click subscribe. Also, head over to Sway Health, that's Sway with two A's, .health, where you will find more great content like this. I'm Colin Hung. Thanks for watching this, and I'll catch you on the next video.